You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Have you ever heard the phrase, embrace the suck? This is one that's often used in the military. It's one that you're very familiar with. It's kind of a mindset that you use to get through hard challenges in life. And it's one that maybe I'd heard a long time ago, but I hadn't heard recently. And we were talking with our guest today, and she very pointedly said, this is something that I want to explore. And I think there's value for our community to really think about this, what this practically means for this journey that we're on. This is a phenomenal story. We're speaking with Shannyn Allan today. She's going to be sharing both her progress on the path to financial independence. And I think there's so much relatability for people in our audience that are maybe saying, am I making progress? Am I moving forward towards something? And what sort of mindset shift do I need to really hold on to this as a long-term goal? Very excited about this episode, and help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. And yeah, I'm incredibly excited about this. I love that concept. Embrace the suck. This is not perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. Life is not perfect. We're figuring this out as we go along. We're experimenting. We're just exploring what makes us tick. And I'm at her website, thewonderluster.com right now, and I love this phrase that's emblazoned right across. Because your dreams don't wait until you retire. And I just think that's brilliant and a wonderful way just to explore life. So Shannyn, welcome to the show. And I just want to ask, where does your story start?
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here and, taking a step back as to where my whole FI journey began. I actually was a broke grad student in Chicago and started a blog in 2011 to talk about how broke I was and how impossible it felt to live on a tight budget in the city. And of course, back in the day, it was simply about saving money and being frugal. And I stayed on that path for several years until I discovered the FI movement 2-3 years ago to chronicle my journey about saving money and how challenging it is to live on a limited income, pay down my student loans, and navigate life in a brand new city. I stayed on that frugal path for several years. And over time, I started to question whether just saving money should have a larger purpose. After a couple years of living frugally and blogging about it, I was very excited to discover the FI movement because it gave a larger purpose to why I was saving my money and a long-term strategy that I feel is a lot more sustainable. So even though I had some pretty humble beginnings with a really messed up WordPress blog and I had no idea what I was doing, it really has been tracking my life since then. And I'm really excited to be part of a larger community.
I'm always looking for the distinction between the pre-FI and the post-FI aware life. You were interested enough about being frugal and chronicling your life that you started a blog. I mean, that in and of itself is a big step. But what changed for you when you found the concept of FI?
Ooh, that is a very juicy question. I think I got tired, to be honest. I started blogging in 2011 and my life had changed pretty radically. I no longer was in grad school. I had paid down my loans. I was saving up for a house. I was thinking about marriage and family. And of course, as you naturally get older, you start to ask bigger questions as opposed to how can I survive this month alone? How can I pay down this one debt that I have? You want a larger purpose. And coming across the FI movement, it was like, there we go. That's my why. Now that I'm in my 30s, I want to be able to live for my family. I want to be able to help my community. I want to have a legacy. Though it's important to get by that month to month, when you get beyond survival mode and you know the skills, you've built the muscle, asking why and finding a larger movement to attach to can be very challenging, but it's so rewarding.
I want to talk about, you said that you were a broke graduate. I think many of us find ourselves in that position. And I think it's a pretty cool tactic to start chronicling your progress out of brokenness, right? I mean, there's a level of accountability that comes with being willing to document the steps. It's a tried and true method for really aligning your actions with your goals. In terms of, how you got to broke, When you look back at that, is that just where you were and you aren't really able to do any forensics, or can you kind of look at the steps you took and would you have made the same choices now? Or was there anything that you would do differently to avoid that broke graduate status?
Honestly, I would say, and I know we'll get to this, I wouldn't change a single thing about my life. I made all of those choices and I own them. And I think sometimes being in a place of extreme frugality, of struggle, of owning your decisions, of sometimes making some messy mistakes, it's absolutely worth it. I saved as much money as I could in that period. I had a really crummy apartment on the north side of Chicago in a bad area with 2 roommates and a roach infestation. It's either a good time or a good story. And even though I could say that my graduate years were not very glamorous, it taught me a lot about bootstrapping, resiliency, and the ability to just be like, wow, this is kind of a gross chapter of my life and it's hard, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I probably would have saved a little bit more money if I could have, but I did the best I could in the situation I had.
So you're chronicling your journey and you're working on leaving this broke status behind. You're saving your money. You find the financial independence movement and you dial it up. What moved the needle for you to start allowing you to actually start creating that space and save your income? What did you get a job right out of college? Did you pivot careers? Tell us a little bit more about your money story.
Sure. Sometimes we know our life purpose when we leave college. And then there are other people like myself who stumble into their life's work and their career field just by happenstance. And that's exactly what happened with me. I was originally a sociology graduate student, so I wanted to be a college professor. And I started the blog on a suggestion of a man I was seeing at the time who thought I, might be a decent writer. And I started learning more about blogging, social media, and about podcasting, video production, all that stuff, and really followed a passion I didn't know I had. I decided not to stay in grad school to get my PhD and decided to build a blog and see if I could leverage it into a career. So I stumbled forward into a career in social media marketing, which has been quite fruitful. And it got me from probably the broke life I was on to a stable career where I was earning an income. I have a 401k package, all those fun benefits that we like as a career, and just moved forward from there. But yeah, definitely didn't choose this career or think that I was going to go for it, but it moved the needle from totally broke and just fumbling around in a hobby to a full-blown passion and a career.
Shannyn, I love the intersection here of followed a passion I didn't know I had and messy mistakes. To me, that's how I look at my own journey these past 10 years. I found this passion of podcasting, which if you had asked me 10 years ago, that would have maybe been amongst the most unlikely things in the entire world. Well, first, I'd never heard of podcasting, but being a radio show host, like I was the guy who had this self-proclaimed, oh, I'm an introvert. I don't like public speaking, all these things. But yet a series of basically these kind of messy mistakes with building websites and failing and all this stuff led me to this point. And I just love your concept of, I have made messy mistakes, but I wouldn't change a thing. I think that's really powerful. And that ties back to what we said about embrace the suck. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and like what you would tell the audience member out there who has made those mistakes and they still beat themselves up about it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have come to embrace the suck and love my messy middle through a series of very deliberately undeliberate mistakes that I've made. And in fact, part of my story of going to grad school ended up being a big mistake. I thought I was going to be a college professor. I thought I was going to write about sociological issues for the rest of my life, only to move from California to Chicago and get to grad school and realize I absolutely hated it. And I didn't want to stay in the ivory tower for the rest of my life. I think that embracing something messy about your story is absolutely pivotal to making progress. The idea that some of us in the community have had an unblemished record to get to FI, though it's a wonderful story and it's inspiring to some, if you've had mistakes in your past, I would say it's absolutely okay to own them. It's okay to be embarrassed by them. It's okay to take some pivots or some turns you didn't expect and just really lean into the fact that sometimes in your past, maybe you've made decisions that were not fruitful or useful for yourself, or maybe ones that led you to an unexpected destination. as much as we all type A love to have a plan, sometimes it doesn't work that way. And embracing the fact that you've made choices in your past that no longer serve you, or the fact that maybe they led to somewhere you're not quite sure about even today, that's absolutely fine. And it's absolutely a part of your story. And you have a choice at the end of every day what you're going to do with those choices.
So I want to talk about owning your mistakes and allowing yourself to move forward. And you mentioned grad school and how you kind of felt like you had your ladder on the wrong wall, right? This was not the career that you wanted to invest the rest of your life into. What other, either financial baggage or messiness did you feel like you had to unwind in order to move forward on this path?
That is a very good question, because I feel like if anyone in this community needs a cheerleader, maybe I can be that person for them, because I have made a lot of mistakes. And some of them weren't of my own doing, but I absolutely own them now. I mean, it started with going to graduate school and deciding, like you said, I didn't want to stay in that career field. That was an expensive mistake that I had to make. I had to pay off those student loans for several years, and it really, I felt, set me back, where I was paying for something I didn't even value any longer. But going forward from that, I fell in love with a person and I got engaged. And he wasn't quite transparent about his financial choices, even though we had a lot of discussion about it. And I ended up calling off a wedding because of some things I unearthed during the engagement process that was really devastating and embarrassing. I had to take my deposits back and announce to the whole wide world that this man I thought I was going to marry ended up not being a fit for where I wanted to go. And he had some deception in his past that we had to unpack together, and eventually decided that we weren't right for each other. And, going forward from that, I later bought a house, another mistake that I made, where I lost my down payment to wire fraud. During the closing process, one of the real estate agents or the title company was compromised. I should have kept my eye on the prize, but thought I was in good hands. And I lost $52,000 to wire fraud, which luckily I eventually got back, which was great. But that was a huge, devastating setback. It was humiliating when it happened. And within a few short years, I went through a wedding that I called off. I rebuilt my life once. And then I decided, to put 20% down on a home, and lost it and got it back. And both of those experiences in my life were extremely public, extremely challenging to get through. And if anything, it proves that I am flippin' human and I don't always know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to keep on plodding forward.
That's incredible. And it's amazing to see how you've come through that, really come through the fire. And I want to ask you, what did that teach you about resiliency? Maybe not when you're going through it and you're just trying to survive and keep your head above water, but as you're building on the scars that probably imprinted on you, what did that teach you about resiliency?
Yeah, resiliency is a practice. I wish I could say that every time something punches you in the face that you could just come up swinging. But the fact of the matter is that there are a couple things in order to be resilient that you have to practice in your life. The first thing is you have to realize that if you've made a mistake, or even if something happened to you, I mean, sometimes these things that set us back are completely out of our control. But I would say the first thing is realize you're in a crummy place and ask your community for help, whether that's a trusted friend, a family member, people in the FI community. Realize that you're in a sticky situation or you're cleaning up the mess of your past, and ask trusted people for support. I tried to be on my own mountain where I thought I could just shoulder the burden of my life on my own, and realized that it was a very lonely place for me to be. When I finally got over myself and realized, like, oh my gosh, calling off a wedding is hard. Going through wire fraud is terrible. And I opened myself up to receive the support of others and just admit what had happened. It led to so much growth, and I realized I couldn't do it on my own. The other thing that I've learned about resiliency is sometimes we have to practice self-care, and we have to take a day for ourselves, or even a couple weeks for ourselves, but we have to do the self-care without sabotaging ourselves. I have had to find some FI-friendly coping mechanisms to deal with stressful situations. I used to do retail therapy or go to the bar, and I realized that that wasn't serving me in the long run. And I find that finding things that don't blow my budget and just take a day of rest and reflection when I need them as they come has been really helpful in helping me build that resiliency muscle of, wow, this is really hard. I don't know where the end is, but today I'm going to say today sucked, and I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to watch a favorite movie, something that isn't going to sabotage my progress, but allows me to just lean into the fact that sometimes these setbacks or these turns are challenging, but just because one day was ruined or 1 week was ruined or one modicum of progress was completely sabotaged, that doesn't mean we have to throw the baby with the bathwater out.
Shannon, I absolutely love that, especially the last thing there about self-care. Taking time for yourself sometimes and just realizing it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be about efficiency or your to-do list or being busy or, I don't know, trying to live up to some societal ideal. Just admitting, okay, that didn't go as well as I hoped, but I'm just going to be resilient. I'm going to take that time for myself and just get back to it. I think that is utterly brilliant.
I actually wanted to circle back to something you said there in terms of leaning on your community. And I wanted to go specifically to this wire fraud. Now, having recently gone through the sale of a home and a purchase of a home, so having seen wire frauds from two different, perspectives, a wire fraud is possibly the most terrifying single transaction that I can imagine. And your worst fear is, what if the money disappears? This is a lot of money. What if the money disappears? And in your case, it did. It's just vanished. And I'm curious, as soon as everybody, all parties realized it, did the bank just come running to your defense to say, how can we make this right?
Oh, I wish. I wish it was that nice. One thing I learned about losing $52,660.57, and I will remember that number probably until the day I die. One thing that it really taught me is you have to advocate for yourself. I really wish I could say that the banks came to my aid, but it was completely by luck that I caught the fact that something was wrong with this transaction. I caught it within 2 hours and was able to call the title company, my real estate agent, and both banks to say, hey guys, this isn't right. We need to fix this. Unfortunately, once I raised the flag that something was definitely wrong, and my title company and real estate agent also came to the awareness that the money was absolutely gone, it was a 3 or 4 week period before things were resolved. And it meant, literally hundreds of calls, hours on the phone, lots of tears and anguish, a lot of fear, a lot of humiliation that came up. And nobody was going to get me through that process from the professional side of things because they were simply trying to cover their butt for this big whoopsie that they just made. And I had to slowly pace myself through those days and enlist the help of people in my life to keep me fighting. And that's really the truth of it. Sometimes you just need people to hold you up when you can't even hold yourself up. But unfortunately, I wish I could say that I had a bunch of heroes in the real estate industry that really fought for me, but that for me was not the case. And I really have to thank the people in my life who made my recovery of that money, the miracle unicorn, wonderful thing that happened, possible.
So Shannon, let's dive into some actionable stuff about this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear about how this unicorn miracle happened, because frankly, I've always heard if you wire it to the wrong place or there's fraud, the money's gone. It just doesn't come back. So we'll get to that in a minute here. But obviously, there are many people out in the audience who are going to purchase homes. They're going to have to make a wire payment. What would you have done differently in very concrete steps to safeguard that this very likely wasn't going to happen? Obviously, you can't get it down to zero, but as close to zero as possible.
Oh, absolutely. One thing about wire fraud, the laws of disclosure are very different from state to state. And even since this wire fraud issue happened to me, the state of Texas has now made some consumer safeguards to prevent this from happening, but it will still happen. Wire fraud is very prevalent and it's on the rise. And so I would say that whenever you're having a transaction of this size, keep your eye on the prize and stand up for yourself. One of my biggest mistakes in buying this home in general, because I've had problems with the house since then, numerous problems, but through the closing process, one thing I failed to do was advocate for myself. I wasn't brave on my own behalf. I had faith, and it was quite frankly a crutch that my real estate professionals and the seller and everyone involved had my best interests at heart, and that's not the case. I would say, number one, stick up for yourself and listen to your gut. If you feel that something isn't right, whether you're buying a house, whether you're buying a car, whether you're starting a business, whether you're loaning money or investing towards anything, listen to your gut. Of course, fear is natural and you're going to feel it. But if there's something in your gut that isn't right, slow down and listen. I wish I would have slowed down, but I felt so pressured to keep going that I didn't raise my hand aggressively enough to say, I'm not okay with this and we need to stop.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And obviously, I do want to dive into specifically what happened. But as I understand it, with a lot of wire fraud, what's compromised, especially in the communication system, is via email. So you get instructions from people. And I don't know if this happened to you, obviously, but this is a more broad lesson is somebody hacks into either the real estate agent, the attorney, or the title company, their email and sends you information on where to wire the money. And you just figure, oh, it's coming from my title company. It has to be real. And I know at least with my real estate transaction last year, I was advised strongly to never, ever, ever look at wire instructions via email. So it was only going to be mailed to me via overnight UPS or FedEx. I would have those documents. And then if I really wanted to, I could phone the person I had been speaking with repeatedly and they could confirm it for me. That was the way that it was explained to me. I'd love to hear if something similar was explained to you and a very granular fashion, like where the fraud happened with you.
I wish my closing was that beautiful. I had a series of unfortunate events that happened during my closing. As alluded, every state is going to handle things differently for closing. In the state of Texas, there are not as many consumer protections here. And I would say, in general, purchasing a house is generally a messy endeavor. It can be fast, it can be furious. There are a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of pressure, at least I felt, to get to the finish line quickly. In the state of Texas, they still email your documents over. I did request several times with my closing team, hey, I would prefer to bring in a check. Can somebody call me and confirm the details of how much the cashier's check should be for, where I'm going, where I should bring the check to? Like I said, it's different in every single state. And so that's why I would say for anyone that's going through closing, make sure you take a second to pause. And especially if you're a first-time buyer like I was, ask your closing team and your real estate agent, what can I expect from closing? And then identify parts that maybe you're not comfortable with, like myself. I didn't want to wire my money. I wanted to bring a cashier's check, but I felt pressure from my closing team to, oh, it's fine. Email's secure. Don't worry about it. We'll email you the documents. And I actually couldn't get people from the title company to return my phone calls when I had questions. And that should have been a red flag right there. Unfortunately, people in our community, especially if you're a new buyer, you may find that the real estate agent who's supposed to be taking care of you isn't paying attention. You may find that the laws in your state are different. You may find that each company has their own preferred way of doing things. But in my case, with the email, I was emailed over documents that were encrypted. But unfortunately, the title company, we believe, was compromised. The scammers took the email, scraped it, photoshopped the different account number in closing into the email and resent the email. So it fell on when I pulled it up on my mobile phone, it fell right in line with the entire series of communications I had had with my agent and with my title company. So it looked identical unless you were really keeping a close eye on it. And unfortunately, when I took my information to the bank, another thing that should have happened was the bank should have called the phone number that was on the letterhead and confirmed the account holder's information for me, but they also failed to do that. Since then, the bank I took it to apologized and said that they're going to make changes to how they do wires going forward. But as stated, it's different from state to state. And I would say for a first-time buyer, make sure you keep your eye on the prize, ask lots of questions, and make sure you understand how things should go for your state instead of just assuming that your title company and your real estate agent is keeping an eye on it for you.
I want to take a second and really look at this from a consumer advocate perspective here. And I appreciate you telling us exactly how the system broke down and failed you, because I think that is really, really useful. I want to point out one thing for our audience in that wires are very common in terms of closing deals with real estate, and probably your team, your closing team, will want to use a wire. And this is not a sign that fraud is going to happen. It's just the norm. And if that's the case, the safest way to go about the wire is likely what Brad was mentioning. This the physical documents that you receive that they tell you are coming, that are going to be there on a certain day, that keeps that separation between the email and the actual wiring account information. So it's interesting to see, because I didn't know why they did that. I just experienced that multiple times, but it's interesting to see in the context of what you just shared with us and with our audience, why it's important to have those multiple layers of safeguards in place so you don't lose potentially anywhere from 10 to 200 plus $1,000. It's just wow. But now let's still get this from the other side. I've worked for corporates and I've been in situations where a corporate entity knows they've screwed up. They know it. But the last thing they want to do is admit it. They can't afford to admit it. They absolutely can't. The thing you want to do is to minimize, and pray that it goes away on its own. And that's the legal team's strongly guarded advice. Never apologize. Never say you did anything wrong, especially publicly. And if you need to do something, make sure that nobody else knows about it in terms of cleaning it up. That seems to be the bar. Now, in your case, I imagine that when you said, whoa, by the way, the money has disappeared, what's going on? One of the immediate reactions was, well, you screwed up. you screwed up. We didn't do anything. We just followed our system. You screwed up. How were you able to get them to actually, one, apologize, which I heard you mention, but then two, rectify the situation, which likely, because it doesn't sound like you said that they got the money back from the fraudsters. It sounds like they essentially paid out $50,000 plus. How were you able to make that happen?
Well, it was a long process. From the day that the money disappeared to the almost 3 or 4 weeks later, I had to extend my closing several times, which was pretty stressful. And you're right, the corporations did not want to take accountability for it because everybody was trying to cover their tush as to who made the mistake. Well, in fact, everybody made mistakes. Everybody could have been taking better care of me, the client, and nobody did. The bank should have called to verify the information. My title company should have had better email security, and they should have disclosed to me about wire fraud, which they now do. My real estate agent, and sidebar to this, I emailed my real estate agent when this was happening before I wired the money and actually asked her, hey, I got this email. It doesn't seem right to me. Is this okay? And she literally said, yes, don't worry about it. Sorry for the hassle. Literally everybody's hands were dirty from this and nobody wanted to take accountability for it. The only way that we got this rotten potato to the finish line for me to recover the money was that I made police reports. I filed something with the FBI to get them in on it because it was over $50,000. I called both banks, even though I wasn't a client at the second bank, and I called them every single day. I called my real estate agent frequently. I called my title company frequently. I literally was a squeaky wheel for 3.5 weeks. We caught the wire within 2 hours. So fortunately for me, the money never left the fraudster's bank. And so it was in a holding pattern for about 3 to 4 weeks. Of course, going back to my earlier point, it was a messy, rotten potato that nobody wanted to fix. And both banks were blaming each other. One bank said, well, we want a hold harmless letter from you to say that, hey, everyone's off the hook, it's fine. Well, the other bank, the recipient bank, also wanted the same thing. So my money was at a standstill for 3.5 weeks. Because like you said, nobody wanted to be culpable or admit fault for this. But I had a series of email trails of people who kind of did things not so great. And beyond that, if I had to go to court, I could. I documented everything. But in order to try and win this house back and get my money back in time for close, I literally gave up on the fact that anybody would admit fault. And I got on social media and started tweeting and Facebook posting and going absolutely nuts and enlisting the help of people in my life to hold those responsible accountable and let them know that I wasn't going to give up and I wasn't going to go away.
I really, really wanted to highlight this because what I have noticed in this pattern, and a lot of people complain about social media, and there's a lot of flaws with social media, but one amazing piece of social media is that it's public. And in the context of what we were saying, if you want to get great customer service, if you want to get the attention of not just the automated call center that's stationed in some offshore country, et cetera, and they're transferring you from one department to another, if you want to go straight to the heart, you want to get to PR. And if you want to get to PR, the best way to access a company's PR department is social media. If you can engage your community to say, look, this is wrong, and, corporation, your brand is being reflected by this experience. You need to resolve this. Social media is your best friend. Twitter, for all of Twitter's flaws, Twitter is your best friend. It's amazing how quickly you were able to leverage social media to resolve this.
Yeah, social media is kind of a dumpster fire on one side, but it also can be an amazing tool, not only to get a corporation's attention, but also, I was the underdog in this. And when people found out about my story, they wanted to use their networks to help me get to the finish line. I will say that tweeting and Facebook posting, if you're ever in a consumer situation like this, will be different from brand to brand. Bank One, the recipient's bank, was very responsive to my tweets and they freaked out. My bank, though, did not really care as much. They were not as responsive. And it really varies from brand to brand as to how much attention they will pay to you or what staffing that they have on the back end. That's actually what I do for a living is I'm a community manager for a large brand. So I know how this game is played. But, it doesn't matter. Be smart, tag the brands, be persistent, and enlist the help of people in your life to retweet, to comment, to chime on, and make sure that the bank knows you're not going away or whatever brand you're working with. Be respectful at all times, but let them know that you're holding them accountable in a public forum, and eventually they will come to.
So Shannyn, that's from ultra high tech to, I guess for me, the last little tip I would give as far as sending money via wire would be ultra low tech, which is just quadruple check the numbers of the accounts you're sending to. I had an issue with this actually when I was purchasing a rental property recently. My banker literally typed the number in wrong and we were almost ready to hit send. And I said, you know what, let me check that one last time. And there was just one number transposed. We fixed it and all was well. But wires, they just scare the heck out of me. So clearly you had this frightening, bizarre situation, but lots of us can be susceptible to human error, right? So just as simple as just quadruple check that number. So I did want to kind of go back to another part of your story, which really you alluded to calling off this wedding due to financial infidelity, as I'm hearing it. And I'd love for you to tell the audience, what were the signs that you missed? What were the questions you could have asked? A lot of us, we're always looking for this real actionable stuff because your story is replicated across many, many tens of thousands of people, right? There are people out there that are leaning in. They want to hear, like, what have you learned now that if you had known then, you could have gone back and asked those questions?
Absolutely. I really want actionable tips for our community. And honestly, the fact of the matter is that sometimes people make poor choices. And I have to say, the person that I was dating at the time, I hope he's grown since then and is living a wonderful life. But I just decided he was not for me. What I could have done differently, even though we did have many conversations about our values and how we were spending our money and what kind of life we wanted to build together, sometimes people make mistakes and they're dishonest. And I would say that no matter how many conversations you have, how many questions you ask, how many scenarios you play through, sometimes people may not take care of you or they may have their own interests first and say the wrong things. So when that type of thing happens, even though I wish I could tell you the perfect question to ask or the great conversational roadmaps, go back to knowing your own values and to know your worth. One of the only things I can say to our community is that sometimes bad things will happen to you. But if you know what you're willing to tolerate and what you need to walk away from, no matter what the situation, it's a good guidepost of like, whoops, well, I wish I could have asked better questions. I wish he or she would have been honest. But now I have to deal with this again, moldy potato. What do I do? Knowing your own core values will be that guidepost of what do I do now? Going back, I wish there were things I could have done differently. But to be completely frank, I feel me and my ex had lots of conversations about our values and our finances. Unfortunately, though, I feel that he wasn't honest and there wasn't much we could have done differently. It's just a matter of making wise choices going forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of, if you're going to have conversations do have to be based on honesty. If that's not there, then it's probably going to be futile to begin with. So I certainly understand where you're coming from. I want to move forward, past some of these roadblocks you've kind of had to work through, but you start feeling like you have some agency, some control, things are working, you're making progress, but not all the time, right? It's not always once you get it dialed in, it just works and then you're just going to the finish line. Sometimes it feels like you're just barely treading water. Sometimes it feels like you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. When you're on this journey, you've got a tactic and a strategy that you think is going to work for you, but it's not moving as fast as you want it to move, or you occasionally feel like you're in a state of overwhelm. How do you handle that?
I would say that for many of us in the FI community, we see everybody who's on the other side of success, though that sometimes is very inspiring. That can sometimes be kind of a shutdown. It can be kind of intimidating when you see people that you feel have made all the right choices, and sometimes you're barely treading water. You're just trying to get through the day. The first piece of advice I would have is decide who's going to influence you. If you're on social media and you need to take a step back from Instagram or the Choose FI forums or anything that isn't inspiring you, it's okay to take a breather. Sometimes in the trenches of your own experience, you just need to get through that day without playing the comparison game with 50 other people in the community. Take a deep breath and realize that you will get there someday, but maybe until that person or that influence inspires you again, you just need to take a deep breath and focus on yourself. The second thing I would recommend is to remember that progress is not linear. You will have good days and bad days. You will have setbacks. The progress forward is not always a straight path from 0 to 100K in net worth or fat FI. You know that there will be setbacks beyond your control. And there will be things that even knowing what you can still be dumb sometimes and make a mistake. That's okay. Remember, you're still moving forward, even if the path doesn't feel completely straight and instead feels pretty up and down and a little bit rocky. That's normal. That's to be expected. And when you embrace that side of it, you stop beating yourself up for the person you aren't or the person you were. And it's good to know that it'll get there eventually, even if it's not completely straight.
And that line I think is sitting with both Brad and myself. Progress isn't always linear. That's incredible. And part of that is when it's not always just like downhill, everything's easy street. Sometimes your accomplishments, sometimes they can feel like small. And you have this tendency to just not even look at them or not recognize the amazing stuff that you're actually accomplishing, that you're actually doing each and every day. How do you feel about noticing the little actions that you're taking in your life?
In the FI community, we have a tendency to see the biggest milestones as being the ones that are important. But I would advise anyone in the community that feels that maybe they're not where they want to be right now, is that if today all you have to celebrate is the fact that you resisted temptation and made a wiser choice just once, celebrate that. It's okay if you are not completely out of debt, that you didn't max out your 401k this year, or the fact that maybe you've made some mistakes in the past that you're still paying for now. Every accomplishment is worth celebrating. Even the big ones that are great, they're wonderful to get inspiration from, but those big accomplishments come from a series of small choices that often go unnoticed. And even if it feels small and insignificant, slow down, maybe keep a journal or share it with a friend. Find a way to tout what you've done and make sure you're taking note of every piece of progress along the way because it is motivational. And remember, you're never going to get to the big place you're going without taking one step foot in front of the other to get there.
Yeah, what you just said in the last few minutes is so important. And I hope people hit rewind and listen to it again because life is made up of those little moments. It's made up of those little choices. That's what puts you on that path. It's not linear. Both of us kind of had goosebumps when we heard that. That progress is not linear. Life is not perfect. It's not Instagram worthy. It's not that perfect Facebook picture of you and your family smiling. That is not real life. And it's not FI. It's not any of these things. My life is not like that all the time. It's not unicorns and rainbows just because I've hit FI or I have a successful podcast or all these other nonsensical things. Life is about moments, and it's about putting together days and weeks and months that you find that one good thing and you hold on to that and you think about those good things and you try to put more and more of them together. Find out what does light you up, right? What are those things? Maybe you look for patterns in those little things. What could I be spending more time on? What could I be spending less time on that just brings me down? I think it's totally unrealistic to think that the 16 waking hours a day are just going to be perfect. FI or no FI, right? That isn't the way it works. That's not the human condition. So I really hope everyone understands that in their deep core. This is about just putting together a life that you're happy with. And it can be those little moments, those little choices.
Something that's really helped me is that no matter what you're dealing with today, money, success, fame, the new house, the beautiful relationship, the perfect Instagram feed, will not change that. They say mo money, mo problems. Well, new success, new problems. So the problems you're dealing with today will never ever go away. They'll just be different problems. And so learning to embrace the fact that even if you do pay off that debt, even if you do hit that milestone, it doesn't mean that you're going to live in some nirvana of a problem-free existence. You will always have problems. And when you realize that that's what makes life beautiful, the challenges, the overwhelming factors, the mistakes that you made, the lessons learned, and realize that like you're always going to be an evolving person, that makes the journey so much more fruitful, and that money won't make your problems go away. It just means that you have maybe bigger or different problems, but that's absolutely okay too.
So I kind of want to like package some of this together and give our audience some flavor of what you've been able to accomplish. So you've never had a job that paid six figures. And I think that's something that we hear out there. But due to the fact that you're willing to cultivate a skill set, which is highly in demand, and you're a social media manager, due to the fact that you're willing to side hustle and bring in additional forms of income, you've definitely flirted with that line, if not crossed over, and you've been able to pull off something remarkable. And you're on this incredible trajectory to reaching financial independence within 15 years. That is unbelievable. And I think people, I just want to pair that because we didn't really have time to dive into because there's so much value in the content that you've shared with us. Basically, everybody gets to talk about their highlight reel, but to actually take the time and explore your failures and really lean into those and pull out the action there. That's what the heart of what I think we wanted to accomplish with this episode. And I appreciate you being vulnerable with us. I wanted to say, and I wanted to really ask you and challenge you, because I think there's something here for our audience to share with us your why behind probably the most generous gift imaginable. With someone in our community this past year, you donated a kidney. That to me is amazing. I mean, there's levels of generosity, but talk about giving of yourself and giving of your heart. Like what you did here is unbelievable. And I just want to go back and ask you about your why for this, because this is definitely not something that you do lightly.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to share this update with the greater Choosify community. Is that, yeah, in May of this year, I donated a kidney to a stranger, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I would say at the end of the day, why any of us are on the path to financial freedom and independence is because we want to be more present for the people in our lives, because we want to have more impact, because we want to make a difference. And I explained this to a friend earlier this week. I'm not saving money just so I can sit on a pile of cash like Scrooge McDuck. I'm doing it because I don't want to just clock in and clock out of my job every day and then go home, pay taxes, and die. I want to make a difference. All of the hardships, which I reframe as opportunities over the last several years, have really made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. Not only do I get to work a job that has benefits that help me move the needle forward towards FI, I have a roof over my head, I have an amazing community, I have lessons that were hard won and hard fought, but have made me who I am. It makes sense now that I need to give back. And that's exactly why I wanted to donate a kidney. Because again, embracing that messy middle, I am far from FI. I'm nowhere near FI at this point. But I'm making it a point to enjoy the journey along the way and make the impact I can with what I have exactly where I'm at. And donating a kidney to a stranger this year was amazing. It was such a great opportunity. And I have to say, shout out to the Facebook group. That's exactly how this all happened. Was I posted a random question once in the Facebook group, I think like a year or so ago, of whether donating a kidney would impact my ability to get insurance in the future. And a member of our community said, I'm not really sure, but I know somebody who desperately needs a kidney. And it all went from there. So shout out to the Choosify community and for the two of you for helping me have an impact, even though I'm far from FI, but doing something that's really had such an amazing change and impact on my personal life and has made me who I am. So thanks, guys.
I don't think I can continue this interview. Oh my goodness. Now, can I just ask you one question about that? Donating a kidney is not just something like person A can give it necessarily to person B. There is like a compatibility test, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting looking back on my life, how many like little unicorn moments I've had in my life, losing my money to wire fraud and getting it back, almost getting married, but deciding right before things got real that maybe this wasn't the right choice for me. I've been so fortunate. What's crazy is that I posted in the Choosify group, this woman said, hey, we need a kidney. And I had to go through all the testing and I ended up being a direct match, which was like, whoa, unicorn miracle moment, right? And yeah, I went through a series of tests. They put you through psychological, physical, financial tests, all those things. And I had to go to the Mayo Clinic in January and took some vacation time to do that. And I had everything tested, my blood, my kidney function. I went through psychological evaluations, and they make sure that beyond the physicality that you're a good candidate to donate a kidney. And, a little badge of honor for me, they thought I was good enough to do it. And it was pretty cool.
I don't cry. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. I don't cry, but I'm like crying right now. Wow, Shannyn, that is amazing. That is so incredible. And thank you for sharing, not just doing it, but being willing to share it with us. It's inspiring. Well, we're going to do the hot seat, Brad. Agreed. I'm going to get us to the hot seat. This is going to happen. Shannyn, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
All right, Shannyn, question number 1. What is your favorite blog, podcast, or book of all time?
Oh, this is a good one. I would say my recommendation for a podcast is Design Your Dream Life by Natalie Bacon. It is not financially motivated at all. I mean, it is. It's about having a business and making wise choices. But I would say on the path to FI, making sure your mindset is right and that you feel like, you take a bath every day for your physical nature. Take a mental bath every day or every couple days to make sure you're staying positive, that you're staying grounded, and that you're staying focused. I love her podcast. I would also, if I can squeeze one in, would recommend The Year of Less by Kate Flanders. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And it's about a woman who does a shopping ban. And it's been really inspirational for me. And I would recommend anybody who's trying to downsize their life, check out her book.
Now, you tackled a shopping ban for yourself this year. How'd it go?
So far, so good. I'm going to be creating a YouTube video about this shortly. I did have one mess up this year, but I have saved a couple $1,000s and I've gotten rid of so much clutter in my life. It's been a real challenge to not go to Target whenever I feel like it, but it has been super rewarding and super insightful into why I shop and when I shop. So I would highly recommend somebody give a shopping ban, whether they do it for a month or a year, a try, because it's absolutely insightful into the psychology of why you're spending money and when you spend money. Yeah,
and I will also second Kate Flanders' book, A Year of Less. We'll have it linked up in the show notes, but that's a fantastic book. And we talked to her last year. Brad, what episode was that?
Yeah, it was episode 81.
All right, question number 2. And Shannyn, we talked about a few of these, but the question number 2 is an inflection point or points in your life that were especially memorable or meaningful.
Yeah, I think the theme of this episode is pretty much inflection points or choices that did not go as planned. And I would say, of course, throughout this episode I shared, I don't have one inflection point, but I had many. Lately, though, donating a kidney was a game changer because I had to take all the baggage of the previous years that I've had, all the setbacks, all the choices that didn't go as I planned, the wire fraud, calling off a wedding, a house, which I did buy that did not go as planned. And I had to make a choice. And that choice was that my mistakes are really opportunities. And no matter where I'm at, I can make the choice to make a positive difference in my life and in the lives of others. And I would say for anyone out there who's struggling, no matter where you're at, you can make a positive difference in your own life and in someone else's life. And you would be surprised at where you're going to be in a year by making a series of small and deliberate choices. So, of course, I wish I could say it was just one, but no matter who you are or where you at, you can make a difference in your own lives and in others and believe in yourself to do just that.
Yes, Shannyn, I completely agree. I think there are lots of things that happen to us, and a lot of people are looking for excuses of, oh, they did this or they did that or some unseen force. But like you said, turn that around, make it that internal locus of control, and you just feel better. You feel more empowered, and you can make those small choices to make your life better. So yeah, that is brilliant advice. All right, question number 3, your favorite life hack.
My favorite life hack would be to invest in free things that will keep you motivated and keep you on track. As I stated earlier, there are times where you just need to stay focused, when you need to be reinvigorated for your long-term goals, and you just feel like you're in a funk. One of the things that's helped me greatly get through some of these setbacks or through these, processes is that I regularly watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, and read books that are completely free that keep me motivated and inspired. Of course, like I said, embrace the suck. Some days are just bad where you're not on point with your goals, but anytime you can reconnect with your why and actually sit down, make a list of goals, make a vision board, listen to the right podcast, or even phone a friend to keep you on point. It doesn't cost you a single cent, but it will help you navigate the lulls and get to where you need to go.
Question number 4 is something also that we've covered. The biggest financial mistake that you've made.
Oh, it's so painful to admit this one, but one thing we didn't share with our community at this point was that even though I lost the $52,000 and got it back, I was able to save the house. Yay, so exciting, except for the fact that this house has been a pig with lipstick. And I know
That's
my
the meaning to
friends,
pigs everywhere.
I know. So many of my friends that are in the FinCon community and Choosify community know about all the woes I've had with this house. But I have put a lot of money into this quote, move-in ready house that I have basically just set fire to my dollar bills. I not only had a house that was missing insulation in half the house, I moved in with a skunk infestation. I had a shady flipper who masked a ton of problems in this house. And I also had 2 people try to break into my house in the same week. And luckily, thank you to the police department, we caught both of those individuals, but I had a series of problems and it cost me at least 13 grand to fix all of these mistakes and invest in tools to make sure my house is safe and habitable. But man, this house, even though I would love to tell our community that, yay, I saved all my money, I also lost a lot of money on this house once I got it. And that's just another one of those opportunities that I had to take a lesson from.
I don't want to spend too much time here, but can we just talk about this home buying purchase for a second? Like, I feel like people a lot of times, I hear this on the more motivated people, like, oh, for sale by owner, and I don't want to pay a real estate commission or whatever. And my counterpoint has always been, well, real estate agents, when you find a good one, are there as a source of protection to make sure that things are done properly, that the home inspection is done appropriately, that the title is taken care of, and you make sure that like all these safeguards are in place, because there's a lot of money changing hands. And yes, does it cost you a commission? Absolutely. But, there are now you have these layers of protection. You have an advocate on your side to kind of guide you through the process. I think that's a very reasonable counterpoint to, oh, well, I don't want to pay a commission. In your case, I keep hearing that you have these people that are watching, and you're not doing it for sale by owner. You're doing it with a real estate agent, and it's still, you're paying the commissions, but you're getting none of the benefits of the protection. Someone with more experience watching out for you through the transaction process. How is it possible that it went this badly? I mean, is there advice here on how to get a real estate agent? Like where was if you look back at the single point, were you just so enamored with the house that you couldn't rewind at all? Was it the agent that just was trying to rush you through the process to move on through the next one? Where did this really fall apart?
All right. So I will say this. There are 2 ways to learn about things in life. For instance, you can read about the theory of gravity by reading about it in a book. Other times you learn about gravity by falling down a flight of stairs. And that's exactly what I did in learning about how to find professionals that are on your side and that will advocate for you. I wish I could give a perfect piece of advice, but learn from my fail and say this. If something in your gut isn't leading you in the right direction, or you feel that somebody isn't on your side, stick up for yourself and walk from that professional. It doesn't matter how many times you've worked with them before or how highly they were recommended to you. The fact of the matter is that you at the end of the day have to be your own advocate. And if you feel that you aren't getting taken seriously by somebody who's working on your behalf, trust your gut and walk. That's one thing I wish I would have done. I don't have any advice on how to find a better real estate agent. And in fact, I'm going to be shopping for one now. I may end up selling this house in the near future, but stick up for yourself and trust your gut, because sometimes even the best recommendations will lead you astray, and you need to know when to walk and keep your own best interests at heart.
Yeah, trust your gut and walk might be the best advice I've heard on this podcast in a very, very long time. I think that's broadly applicable for just about every life situation. So thank you for that. All right, question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
The advice I would give my younger self is that things will not be terrible forever. Sometimes you find that you're in a rough patch of life and things feel like they're going to be hard forever. But anybody who's had young kids or a sick spouse or family member realize that the good times aren't forever and the bad times aren't forever. So just take each day as it comes and realize that even if you get to where you need to go, there will be more problems in the future. So realize that there are seasons to everything and that you'll be okay. Just get through the times as they come.
Now, I'm actually really excited about this question because you've been on a shopping ban. What purchase have you made over the past 12 months that has added the most value to your life? This is our bonus question.
All right. I love this question because I've been on a shopping ban for the last 12 months, but I would say upping my coffee game has been a game changer for me because I'm definitely not a morning person. For those of us that typically like to go to Starbucks, if you can subscribe to a coffee club that has really good beans that you really love, I have done that recently. And I now drink my coffee black because it is so delicious and I invested in quality beans. But something I bought slightly before my shopping ban was a milk frother that I got on Amazon for about $20. And you seriously just put in some regular milk or some soy milk, and it makes that latte frothy goodness on top of your morning coffee. And it is really yummy. I would highly recommend if you're a coffee person, you check it out because it is delicious.
Oh my goodness. How have I not invested in the milk frother yet? I gotta look into this. No, this is great. All right. And while I don't think Brad and I can solve finding awesome advocates in real estate in every city and every county, if you hang out with us this Friday, we will tell you the real estate agent that we get super excited about here in Richmond.
And why?
And why. Okay. Shannyn, wow. I don't have anything to add to this. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story, sharing your why and your heart for this community. People are listening to this. They want to find out more about your story. They want to find out more about the content that you've been producing. They just want to find out more about this journey that you're on with them. What is the best way for them to connect with you and connect with your content?
Absolutely. So I do have my brand called The Wonder Luster, and mainly I've been doing my updates on YouTube. So you can see me on YouTube at The Wonder Luster. That's wonder as in I'm curious, as opposed to wander as in meandering around.
Well, I'm glad we could get that clarified. We'll also have a link in the show notes for today's episode. Shannyn, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, guys.
To our audience, if you got value from today's episode, and if you've been getting value from the episodes up to this point, just take 1 second and press the subscribe button on the platform you're listening to this on. It just lets the providers know you're getting value from the show and you want to be here when we produce additional content. If you want to support us in what we're doing here at ChooseFI, here are 4 easy ways. 1, leave us an iTunes review. To do that, just go to choosefi.com/iTunes. 2, use our page to sign up for travel credit cards. If you want to travel the world with miles and points instead of your hard-earned dollars, then just go to choosefi.com/cards and get started today. 3, if you're working on the milestones of FI, set up a personal capital account to track your progress and use our affiliate link. It's completely free and just go to choosefi.com/PC. P as in Paul, C as in cat. And 4, and most importantly, find your friends, coworkers, and family members who might be open to this message and tell them about the podcast. Have them start with episode 100. It is a fantastic starting place. All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.